Final question and answer video, and usually you guys know what I do for this video. I always like to save my questions that have the most complicated answers all the way until the end. So in this video, we only have 2 questions this time around. These 2 questions required the longest responses, so I decided, you know what, let's just hold these to the final video. We're going to kick it off with our first question from Viking Fan. How would you fix the political system in the United States with all the problems it currently has? For example, gerrymandering, complete disinterest in the political system at every level, and extreme partisanship on both sides. Simple answer: elect me the supreme leader of the planet with the utmost authority to make every decision that matters that needs to be obeyed. Yes, I want to be the planet's dictator in this motherfucker. Outside of that, we can't do shit. Now look, we keep voting in politicians who say they're going to change things, but they really don't. Just look at the Tangerine pretending to be president now. He says he's going to drain the swamp and change Washington, yet he has spent more money in 1 year on his trips and Secret Service protection than Obama and Bush did in all of their 8 years, respectively. Nothing ever changes. It just remains the same, or we just replace one problem with another. When politicians are elected to office, the main thing they do and follow is support their party. That's it. Whether it's blindly or willingly, both parties will always unite just despite the other party. Doesn't matter what the topic is these days. Just look at how many topics out there they have taken polar opposites on. Gun control, abortion, immigration, taxes, Supreme Court nominees, healthcare, border security. They purposely do not agree on anything. Because if your party agrees with something, then our party has to disagree with that. The two-party system in this country is utterly fucking broken. Both Democrats and Republicans have their hive mind thinking, and it's party over people that's what's causing this. They think of their party over the American people. So in all honesty, this is what you need to do in order to fix this. Now remember, this is if I'm elected Supreme Chancellor, Vice Lord, motherfucking Emperor Palpatine in this bitch. So if I had my choice, this is what I would need to do in order to fix this one. Step number 1, eliminate both parties. Look, they've got to go. Everybody in this country already naturally falls into conservative or liberal viewpoints. But that doesn't mean every fucking thing is liberal. Everything has to be conservative. There are Democrats who are fine with gun laws. There are Republicans who do not want to put any limits on abortions. But because their parties tell them to vote a certain way, they do so. And when they vote outside of their party lines, they get punished for it. So here's what you got to do. Remove the party system. Allow our politicians to honestly vote on issues that represent the people that elected them. When you run for office, you don't run as a party. You run as a person solely on the issues. Not because your party told you to, but because you're supposed to think a certain way. Step number 2, cut down on the number of people in Congress. Let's just get real here for a second. 535 people are making decisions. How many fucking people do you need to make decisions? Seriously, that's too goddamn many. So here's what I would do. Reduce that number drastically. The government should have 1 senator per state and 2 representatives per state. That way you still have the Senate and you still have the House of Representatives. That right there eliminates 385 politicians. Get them the fuck out of there. We don't need 385 more fucking opinions on the same bullshit in this country. Get them the fuck out of there. Step number 3, term limits and removing pensions. Basically, I want to get rid of career politicians. People who have spent their entire lives in the fucking offices. And these people want to state, oh, I've dedicated my life to public service. No, you fucking took our tax dollars for 20 to 30 years and will collect our tax dollars all the time you're not in office with your pension while you made shitty decisions when you were in office. Fuck that shit. I want to remove these people. Get rid of the Charles Rangels of the world, the John McCains, John Conyers, Chuck Grassley's who stayed in office forever. I don't want career politicians who live off my tax dollars and then pay the motherfuckers after they've already left office through pensions. Fuck that shit. I want people who are going to make an impact in the short amount of time that they're there and then get the fuck out of office and live a normal life. Step number 4. Change the House of Representative terms from 2 years to 4 years. Look, the House of Representatives is utterly fucking useless to begin with. The only thing it's there for is that you have the second branch of Congress. They get elected to office, they make a few votes during their first year, and by the second year, they're already back on the campaign trail to get reelected. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Extend the timer on when they can be reelected because basically, they don't do shit every other year on top of staying in office for the longest fucking time. I don't want these people. I don't want someone that cast a whole bunch of votes in 1 year and then the next year they're off trying to get reelected. Fuck that shit, man. Step number 5, remove direct fundraising. Right now, any group can pretty much buy a politician. The NRA certainly does. The Koch brothers certainly do it. George Soros does it. Silicon Valley's starting to do it. Here's what I would do. If you want to contribute to fundraising, all that money goes towards a general pool. Corporations, individuals, whatever. From that pool of money, that's what politicians will use equally to run their campaigns. So if in total $10 million was donated to this fund, then both politicians could use $5 million towards their actual campaign. No more begging the rich directly for money. No more asking for $20,000 plate fundraisers and all this other bullshit. The cash is being raised and it goes towards a general election fund. Step number 6. Corruption charges come with a life sentence in prison. This alone would change the landscape of politics. Any official that knowingly took bribes, illegally fundraised, accepted kickback, and is found guilty will spend the rest of their lives in prison. And since these are federal charges, the FBI is absolutely unforgiving with these charges. They are fucking relentless at pursuing corrupt politicians. Any plea deals come with a minimum 20 years in prison with no chance for early parole. If you want to stop corruption, this would scare the fuck out of every single politician out there. Step number 7. Super PACs will still be allowed to spend money on candidates since this is freedom of speech. However, any super PAC or outside funded ad must be disclosed in the ad itself and not as some fucking fine print, not some fucking small writing on the bottom of a screen or an advertise itself. It needs to be part of the ad. The ad needs to dictate that the backing comes from XYZ group so that people who see the ads can clearly tell which companies or individuals are funding this and funding which candidate. No more hiding under the tables, no more deals behind the scenes. Now your shit is out in the open and full disclosures on hand. Step number 8, local district zoning. This is known as gerrymandering. With the elimination of districts in my House of Representatives, basically you get 2 per state, then it won't matter what district somebody is from. If states want to maintain that same level of zoning, they can do that for local politics. But for national politics, removing of parties and cutting down the House of Representatives already does this naturally. So no more zones would actually be needed, and gerrymandering will be pretty much down to the local governments. Step number 9, voting referendums. Right now, the president essentially votes on what 553 idiots agree to do. Fuck that. What should be done? National referendums. Let people vote on what they want as opposed to letting the politicians do that. I would change the government practices to Congress presenting the bill, the American people voting on it, and then being ratified or vetoed by the president. And to keep this short, because I continue to go on, let's just stop here. Step number 10, do not allow the president to select Supreme Court nominees. The president should be giving them a short list of candidates. Like I would allow them to pick, say, 2 judges. Then the senators will be allowed to provide 1. House of Representatives will be allowed to provide 1, and state governors will get the choice of 1. From that short list, the Supreme Court will make their choice from those 5 candidates. Allow the judges to pick who they want to work with. They're already on the highest court in the land, so let them choose who they want their new colleague to be out of that choice from the president, senators, House of Representatives, and the governors. That's how you change the political system, and that's what I would do if I was elected Supreme Chancellor of this motherfucker. Final question. You guys always know that I try to save one of the most complicated answers for the end, and in this case, I'm actually not going to reveal the person's name. When you see the question, you'll understand in particular why I had to do this. So the final question that we have, what do you think of all the stories of sexual abuse and harassment that have been coming out in recent weeks? Harvey Weinstein, Roy Moore, U.S. Olympics coach, Roger Ailes, Kevin Spacey. As a victim of sexual abuse as a teenager myself, I can tell people from experience that saying something when it happens is not easy. You fear too many variables that prevent you from reporting this and seeing the backlash against people reporting incidents of abuse, bringing back horrible memories to me personally. Just wanted to know what you see things and if people are unreasonable when reporting abuse years later. Now, first of all, whether you want to reveal your name is going to be up to you. I know you didn't ask me, but to actually mention that you're a sexual abuse survivor goes to show the courage that it takes just to ask a question like this, let alone all the other topics that have been going on right now. This is such a far-reaching topic to cover because there are so many moving pieces right now, what's going on with all the recent exposure of all these predators and pedophiles, then to the ongoing victim-blaming culture that it entails, you know, with the countless stories of abuse that are never going to be reported or they're never going to have anything done about it. This is a far-reaching topic. So let me start with a more practical approach first before discussing what's going on with the media. Sexual harassment, sexual assault, abuse almost always have nothing to do with the sex itself. In the overwhelming majority of cases of sexual predator behavior, it's the issue of power or control or exertion of influence. The sexual nature of the behavior is a byproduct of deeper behavioral issues. In a number of cases, it's psychological problems that the abuser experienced during their life, and they're projecting that to their victims. And in each one of the cases, no matter the circumstance, it is not the victim's fault. Ever. This bullshit that she was asking for it, She dresses like a slut. Oh, he should be flattered. He's a guy. Why is he claiming sexual harassment? That's victim blaming. And it is just as psychologically horrible as the abuse itself. How fucked up of a species are we, where blaming the victim of a crime being committed to them is becoming acceptable or the norm? No, it is not the norm. And it should never be acceptable because the victims were taken advantage of or molested or coerced into doing something against their will. What we're seeing in the media as of late, starting with Bill Cosby just a few years ago, and now the floodgates have opened with the Harvey Weinstein cases coming along with the 3 to 4 dozen other high-profile cases, shows exactly what the problem is. Abuse of power. It's not the sex itself that these animals want, but the power to force people to do their bidding to inflate their own fragile ego. Just look at all the cases. Cosby and Weinstein are two high-powered Hollywood figures, with Weinstein being probably one of the most top Hollywood figures in terms of clout and power. Roger Ailes, Bill O'Reilly, Eric Bolling, all fired from Fox News for sexual harassment. And since Roger worked at the top of the power food chain, covering up the mess and paying off victims or threatening them was the power they controlled after the harassment already took place. Brett Ratner, Jeremy Piven, Ben Affleck, they have all been accused of harassing co-workers. And even Ben Affleck pinching some girl's tit on live TV has resurfaced. You have Kevin Spacey, Larry Nassar, the U.S. gymnastics doctor, Roy Moore, who's running for the senator in Alabama. They're all accused of some form of pedophilia, preying on children, which is even more horrifying. And in each one of these cases, the abuse is about power. It's the abuse of their influence. Shit, the one person who actually admitted to sexually harassing women was Louis C.K., and his admission was exactly what we're talking about: abuse of power. That Tangerine, pretending to be president, has been accused by over 12 women of harassment, and there's even a famous video of him saying he could grab them by the pussy. Yet, he denies all of this, denies abusing pageant winners that he ran, yet turns around and has no problem telling the media that a girl was too fat. Over the course of all these cases, the one opposing claim that keeps popping up is that you're innocent until proven guilty. In this country, you're innocent until proven guilty, which is what works for a court of law. If any of these cases go to trial, like the Bill Cosby case right now, the accused is innocent until they're found guilty of the actual crime. But let's be honest here for a second. When it comes to sexual harassment, in almost every case, someone is probably going to be guilty before being proven innocent. Just ask Mike Tyson about that. People defending these cases, in particular the Roy Moore case in Alabama, like to point out that if just one of these women are lying, then it ruins the career of the accused person. If just one woman is doing this to get money or to fuck over his chances for office or anything like that, then he is perceived guilty and has to prove his innocence. While it's a fair point, don't get me wrong, but when multiple accusers come out, that's different. When many victims raise their voice, now you have a pattern that alone is what sways public opinion. A few years ago, when one woman came forward against Bill Cosby, then it was another, then it was another, then 3, 5, 10. Soon enough, 60 women are stating he drugged them and raped them, all with the same pattern. Harvey Weinstein, Steven Seagal, these cases are coming forward. And what's the pattern? They invite women to a role for a movie, and then either ask the woman to undress or partially undress themselves in a hotel room or whatever the case is, and they try to veer the conversations towards sex. And if the woman refuses, they say they would not be offered the roles. They would have their Hollywood careers torpedoed before they even have a chance. Kevin Spacey was groping boys. Larry Nassar said it was part of physical exams, and that he needed to put his ungloved bare hands into teenage girls. All patterns, all the victims of the stories line up with what one another said. But defenders of these predators, people who like to attack the victims, are just as big a piece of shit as the predator. They like to point out, oh, why are they waiting so late to report this? Why didn't they say something when it happened? Why are they jumping on the bandwagon now after all these years later? Why did Hollywood cover up all their liberal secrets? Why does Fox News cover up harassment at their network just to make payoffs and shit like that? When people question the victims, this is exactly what makes it harder for them to come forward. Who will believe me? Can I lose my job over this? This man or woman is powerful. How will my life play out in the long run? What if I don't win the court case and they go free? And I look like I lied. Just look at what some of the victims have been saying as to why it's so hard to come forward. Allie Raceman, gold medal winning gymnast, even said she had no clue that her doctor she trusted was actually molesting her. She was too young and naive. She honestly thought he was being honest until she realized, wait a second, why is this guy's hand up my ass? Jerry Dreyfuss didn't even realize he was being hit on by Kevin Spacey with his fucking dad next to him. and he was embarrassed to say something. Jerry Sandusky raped boys he was helping with his charity through Penn State, and they didn't come forward because they were accepting his help and being taken advantage of at the same time. Women of Hollywood put up with Ratner, Weinstein, because they didn't want a powerful man to stunt their careers. Had they come forward and experienced victim blaming, they would have been shut down, and their case would have gone nowhere, only for them to turn around and do it all again to another woman. Harassment, rape, abuse, pedophilia, these have always been about power and control. And it's not only the act of the abuse itself, but it's the installation of fear afterwards to prevent victims from reporting this. It's not easy. And one of the hardest things to always prove in a court of law is a he said, she said. One of the most challenging cases a human resource department can get is a sexual harassment case, especially if there are no witnesses, because how do you prove it? How can you tell who is lying and who isn't? How do you know that something occurred when an investigator needs to remain neutral in just collecting the facts? But finding evidence is very difficult. So when all these women come forward now, when actors like Corey Feldman come forward with child abuse claims years later, when Terry Crews mentions that a man grabbed his junk in the middle of a party, when Leanne Tweeden comes forward and says Al Franken groped her and there's an actual picture that proves that she is correct, you see patterns. And when you have multiple claims, multiple victims, the picture becomes a little bit more clear as to who the actual harasser is, and that their stories line up. It's one thing to have just a single accuser, but when it jumps to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, guess what? There might not be proof for each case, but like the old saying goes, as long as there's smoke, you know there's going to be a fire. You can tell when there's a fire, when all these cases come forward. So for any man, woman that feel embarrassed by this, that feel victimized by this, you have to understand that as hard as it is to report this, as difficult as you know your future might be, when you do report something like this, you could potentially be taking down a harasser. You could potentially be taking down a predator. Now, if you're traumatized to the point that you can't do this, you need time to recover, you need time to understand that, that's fine. It's understandable. Don't worry about what assholes are going to think of you. People who support you are always going to support you nonstop. And when you do have the courage, and when you do have the strength to come forward and tell people your story, tell something what happened to you, tell what your abuser did to you, there are people out there who are going to believe you. There are people out there who probably have a similar experience to you. There are people out there who are going to support you in that decision. So whether you want to report it right away, whether you want to report it down the road, you have to understand that regardless of when you do it, there's always going to be someone there to at least help you get through that part. Abusers might get away with it one time. They might get away with it multiple times. They might be like Bill Cosby, get away with it for 30, 40 years till it eventually catches up to him. Eventually, though, when a victim comes forward, people should not be blaming the victim. That's the whole part of why it becomes so difficult to report things as a victim. Whenever you get the strength to be able to report it, you should do so. That's gonna do it for the latest question and answer session. I want to thank everyone who had the chance to send in their questions. Obviously, this time I had a lot more opportunity to give longer answers when it came to all the things that you guys wanted to know about. As I mentioned, next time we do this, there's gonna be a theme to it. We're gonna have a central question that everyone's gonna be able to ask, and then you guys will be able to run off of that. You guys will see it in the future. It's gonna be pretty fun compared to what we have right now. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And next week's videos, oh, I have 2 fun as fuck rants coming. You guys are not going to want to miss those.